Canada's population continues to boom, but housing starts are plummeting and probably going to get worse over the next couple of years. What does this all mean for Toronto's housing market? That's what I'm going to chat about today. My name is John Pasalis. My team and I help buyers and sellers throughout the Greater Toronto Area make smarter real estate decisions. If you'd like to meet with me and my team to talk about your own real estate decisions, just click the show notes below. So over the past week or so, we've had a number of kind of articles talking about some of the important trends that I think are going on in our housing market and our economy. There was a Yahoo Finance piece talking about Statistics Canada labor force data that shows that the working age population in Canada grew by 400,000 people in the first 4 months of 2024. That's a 47% increase over the same period last year and nearly quadruple the average for those 4 months since from 2007 to 2022. So we're growing at roughly 4 times the rate than we typically are. So, of course, this booming population continues to put pressure on the housing market. Longer term, of course, we're seeing the side effects of low rates. So we're not having a booming growth, and we're seeing the side effects of record condo completions, which is putting downward pressure on rents. But structurally, this is an important trend that is going to be important kind of to keep an eye on, this booming population and to what extent it changes, if it does. On top of that, we saw that Ontario's pace of new home construction slows down to 2018 levels. Housing starts in April for Ontario. We're down 37%. And are going to continue to slow down. Experts are looking at sort of the condo market and are thinking this is probably going to be the lowest sales volumes in nearly 2 decades. So what does this all mean for the housing market? Now, I think there are a lot of things that could potentially impact sort of which direction we're going to go on. And one of the big things, of course, is what happens with Canada's population growth. The federal government has discussed that they're planning on scaling back the number of non-permanent residents in Canada. This, in theory, would take our population growth, which is currently about 3% per year, or 1.2 million people per year, down to 300,000 people per year. That is a massive change. And again, it is, of course, the growth in our population that puts pressure on the demand for new housing. So if that happens, and again, that in theory is going to happen over the next 12 months. So in theory, 12 months from now, Canada's population will be growing by 300,000 if the federal government sticks to their target. I personally don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I'm not confident that the federal government is actually going to stick to that plan. I would be shocked if we're at 300,000 kind of population growth a year from now. But again, let's just say they are. I mean, there's going to be a couple of different factors that we need to keep an eye on. And of course, one is the 2 different housing markets in Canada, condos and houses, can, in theory, do slightly different things depending on sort of which way the market goes and what happens to population growth. Now, if we look at the condo market, interestingly enough, if we look at, actually more importantly, let's not look at the condo market. Look, if we look at the number of houses currently under construction in the Toronto CMA, which is basically the Greater Toronto Area, we could see that condos under construction has been surging. We've been seeing an increase in rental construction, and both are actually higher than the number of units under construction for low-rise houses. So that is like semi-detached row houses, which are typically family-sized units. And of course, the majority of the condominiums that are under construction are for usually bought by investors who are going to be converting them into the rentals. So we have a lot of, or an increase in rentals under construction. We have a lot of condominiums that are going to be converted to rentals. So if the government kind of follows through with their plans to scale back non-permanent residents, we're likely going to see a lot of pressure taken off of rents. I mean, rents may even continue to decline over the next year or so, as if demand for rentals declines, because, you got to think about non-permanent residents actually shrinking. Non-permanent residents are typically more inclined to rent than obviously, to purchase. So that'll take some pressure off rents during a period where we have a ton of units under construction scheduled to be completed over the next year or two. So it's very possible. And I think this is why a lot of people are looking at the condo market, have some concerns about which way the market's going to go in the short term, just due to the fact that we could have population cooling down just as we have a ton of listings that are, or completions that are going to be hitting the market. So I think we need to be mindful of that. And I think if we're looking at buying or if we own condos, I think we got to kind of keep an eye on these trends. But of course, a lot of these dynamics will depend on what the federal government does. If population growth doesn't cool down, we could still have a significant amount of demand for condominium rentals in the future, and then prices may just plateau for a little while. So I think that's going to be an important trend to watch. The low-rise market, I think, will continue to be pressured regardless of what happens with population growth, because it's important to break down kind of our population growth into two components. It is sort of the permanent residents, so that is new immigration, versus non-permanent residents. So immigration is actually going to continue to be very strong at almost 500,000 people per year. The reason why our population growth is going to be 300,000 is because immigration's 300,000, but the net number of non-permanent residents will actually be declining by about 200,000 people. So they're not increasing, they're actually shrinking. So demand for permanent sort of low-rise housing, I suspect, will continue to be strong. And I think this is why low-rise houses are probably going to remain a little bit more stable. But what we're seeing is that they're already incredibly high. Sales are, unbelievably low right now, largely because people can't afford these prices at today's interest rates. And people are starting to leave Toronto and leave Ontario for more affordable markets, in particular in provinces like Alberta and Eastern Canada. So I don't necessarily expect, low-rise home prices to obviously surge, especially given how high they are and given that interest rates might be sticky for a while. But we're probably going to see, I think a lot of people are hoping home prices are going to crash. Listen, I think it's possible that we might see a little bit of a decline, but I think it's less likely. If we're going to see downward pressure, it's probably going to be more likely to be in the condo market than in the low-rise market. And again, we're so far into this rate hiking cycle, and the biggest drop happened just as the Bank of Canada started hiking, actually. And since then, prices have been relatively flat. So again, I think for people who are waiting for this big kind of crash, I think it's, again, less likely to happen in the low-rise market, partly because we're just not building low-rise housing. I mean, again, if your population's exploding, and I think Ben Rabbit, who had a chart showing in one of his reports, who's a macro commentator we're going to have on our show later in the week, showing that there's roughly 20 people for every whole low-rise house, single-family home that's being built, which is an unbelievable number. Again, this has to do with our booming population. 400,000 is sort of the growth in, I think the latest report that I said, in the working age population just in the first 4 months of the year. And obviously in Canada, and obviously our housing completions for low-rise homes are not keeping up. So I think that's going to continue to be a challenge. And we'll see how all of this plays out over the next 12 to 18 months. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below or send me an email at askjohn@movesmartly.com.